The Uncharted trilogy ended on a pretty weak note. I think the mild fizzlings of Drake's deception was partially the reason for Uncharted 4. The third game definitely felt like it wanted to be the ending, but here we are with the fourth entry in the series. And while the other games were icons of the PlayStation 3, Uncharted 4 was the big PS4 game. Where could the series go from where it left off? It seemed like we left Nathan Drake and his gang headed off into retirement, with him appreciating his loved ones over the adventure of treasure hunting. Well, the existence of this game with Nathan Drake on the cover, it's safe to assume that he doesn't fully learn that lesson, and maybe the team at Naughty Dog wanted another shot at closing out the story of Nathan Drake. Is it good? Does Uncharted 4 secretly surpass 2 and become the best game in the series? Or does it fail worse than 3 and is actually the worst that the series has to offer? Well, let's find out as we dive right into Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Uncharted 4 opens up with Nathan Drake and a man named Sam on a boat and making their way towards an island in the distance. They get into a boat chase and their ship crashes into the ocean, and now we get a flashback of young Nathan Drake getting scolded in an orphanage by a nun. And this is sort of backstory we heard from Marlowe back in Uncharted 3. But what Marlowe forgot to bring up was that Nathan Drake had a brother. Nate sneaks out of the orphanage and meets up with his older brother, Sam. And this is the platforming tutorial level of the game, and it's pretty similar to Uncharted 3, but the difference between these two levels is Uncharted 4 has the inclusion of Sam. And having just another character for Nate to talk to makes the level a lot more enjoyable. They sort of get out of town and flash forward to Nate in a prison fight. He's in a Panamanian jail, but he's in there intentionally so he can get access to an old pirate jail cell that once housed the great pirate captain Henry Avery. Sam is also imprisoned with Nate, as well as their financial benefactor, Rafe. While the grappling hook is introduced in the childhood flashback, it's in this level where it gets a lot more use. And it's a great addition to the game. It makes platforming a lot more interactive and engaging. Also, crates are introduced here, crates being the much less exciting thing brought into the game. Naughty Dog seem to like their pallet and ladder moving puzzles from The Last of Us, and so they pushed them on over to Uncharted 4. These crates are pretty standard box pushing obstacles, and they're not the worst, but they do get tiresome after a while. The three treasure hunters try to make a prison escape after Rafe kills a guard, where Sam is shot and killed. After that, we get a sick opening credit sequence, and then flash forward to modern day Nathan Drake. He's scuba diving for salvage as his day job. He's now a normal day job worker, or, as normal as he can be. We get to see the home of Nate and Elena, and Nate's attic is a real good little nostalgia trip. It's kind of the first implementation of Naughty Dog's other big third-person shooter series, The Last of Us. Just walking around an area and pressing triangle and looking at objects. Being able to see the journals from the past 3 games is cool, and the little Nerf gun section's cute. This whole section shows how cozy Nate and Elena's lives currently are. But Nathan Drake is clearly missing the adventure. They play some Crash Bandicoot and then Sam shows up to recruit Nathan. It turns out Sam was saved by prison doctors, but because the Drakes had killed a guard in their escape, the warden had kept Sam a prisoner, and it wasn't until Sam's last cellmate, the drug lord Alcazar's prison break, did Sam manage to escape. But now the drug lord has put a timer on Sam Drake. He only has 3 months to find Henry Avery's treasure, or he'll be killed. Sam recruits Nate for one last job, and the two head off to a black market auction in Italy where a cross of St. Dismas is being sold. And that cross will lead them to Avery's treasure. Uncharted 4 takes a long time to get started. This game has to do a lot of legwork to set up Sam Drake as a character that's always been a part of Nathan Drake's history. But once Sam shows up, the pace of the game really starts moving. Nate lies to Elena and tells her he's going to Malaysia for work, and the brothers Drake head to Italy. Sully returns and helps sneak them into the auction. They plan on stealing the cross, and they split up. Here, Sully meets Nadine Ross, the leader of Shoreline, a private army for hire. It turns out she's working with Rafe, the guy from back then, who's also at the auction with the intention of bidding on the St. Dismas cross. This level is gorgeous looking, and the platforming around the estate's pretty fun. The gang successfully steal the cross, but that's when we get the stealth and shootout sections, and Uncharted 4 encourages a much more stealthy approach to combat scenarios, and that's not bad. I mean, other Uncharted games have had stealth sections, but here we get the implementation of tall grass, along with the grapple hook, which allow for more maneuverability in combat and with sneaking around. Here we also get a fight scene with Nadine, who just waxes Nathan Drake's ass. I also enjoy how Sam and Sully don't get along. We're going to be spending a lot of time with Sam Drake and the usual amount we normally spend with Sully. Sully's had 3 games with the player to get us to like him. Sam just kind of popped out of thin air, so the player is less likely to side with Sam and his paranoia about Sullivan. The gang heads to a graveyard in Scotland where Rafe and Shoreline have been digging, and that area supposedly houses the treasure of Henry Avery. Here, sliding gets introduced. There's like this gravel that acts like a slippery slope, and it's just a new environmental mechanic to deal with. There's some good combat here, a lot of ruined structures to run around and whatnot. Really, it's this level where 2 things become pretty noticeable. First thing is that much more of this game is dedicated towards puzzles, platforming, and talking sections than it is dedicated to combat. So instead of going into room after room, fighting wave after wave of bad guys, like in Uncharted 1, the enemy combat sections are spread out and in much better designed arenas. The second thing that's noticed by now is that these chapters are long. It took me around 5 hours to beat Uncharted 1, it took me around 7 hours to beat Uncharted 2, and also 7 hours to beat Uncharted 3. Uncharted 4 took me 12 hours to beat. That's the equivalent of 1 and 2 combined. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but as the game progresses, it can become pretty draining. After platforming around a secret crypt, the gang finds a map of Kings Bay, Madagascar, which is their next destination. Here in Madagascar, we get this more open world-like level. Sam, Nate, and Sully drive around the area surrounding a dead volcano, and it's way more open than any other level in the series so far, but it's still relatively linear. You can go to a few different ruins and climb around and pick up a treasure or 2, but then you have to go to the areas where plot and gunfights happen. This level's pretty good, less because of its open world inspired design, and more because of how slowly paced it is. There's a lot of conversations to be had, and they're all good. It reminded me of how much I like the characters of Uncharted. I mean, this level only has 3 combat sections total. It's mostly a driving and talking level than an open world one. There's another clue, if not the treasure itself, located in one of the 2 towers of Kings Bay. So Sully and Nate go to one tower and Sam goes to the other. This clock tower is so good. A great sense of scale and just all around fun to platform through. After a few spectacles and puzzles, one including a reference to Guybrush Threepwood of Monkey Island fame, it turns out Rafe and Nadine are hot on their trail. And here we get the Caravan Level to end all Caravan Levels. It starts with a car chase, and I mean, Uncharted 4 introduced driving, and it's gonna milk every second of driving it can. And the car chase has you crashing through the city, and it's awesome, like a crazy taxi sort of thing. And just the visual spectacle of swinging into the caravan chase and jumping around and shooting across all these moving vehicles, it's the best the series has offered up. It's incredible. After escaping Shoreline, the 3 head back to their motel room to celebrate since they found out that the treasure, or what they now think is the lost pirate city of Libertalia, is located on one of the islands off the coast of Madagascar. But Elena is waiting for them. She confronts Nate about lying to her and she leaves, with Sully going after her. Nate can't back down because Sam's life is forfeit if they don't get Alcazar his cut of the treasure. The brothers set off to find out which island houses Libertalia. And this level's nice. You drive around on a boat and platform around some cool terrain. But again, these chapters are very, very long, and this is one of the levels that you can really feel how long the chapter is. But I do enjoy how this game is focused a lot less on combat compared to environment exploring and character interactions. Well, they find the right island, and that brings us back up to the start of the game. Uncharted 2 still holds the crown for the best instance I've personally experienced on catching back up to the present. Uncharted 4's flashback moment just isn't as memorable for me personally as waking up on a train dangling off the edge of a cliff. Here on the island, Nathan Drake comes across a new platforming tool, a sort of rock climbing pick that can be used to help climb up certain surfaces. It's almost exactly like the climbing axe from the new Tomb Raider games. But with the climbing pick, the gravel sliding, and the grappling hook, platforming has gotten a lot more enjoyable simply because it has you pressing more buttons. And for me, the more interaction the platforming has, the more engaged I am with the platforming. I mean, it's all certainly a lot better than just holding up on the control stick. Anyway, Nate runs into Sam, the two squabble for a bit, because Nate is having doubts and wondering if finding Libertalia will be worth it. And right after that, they find Libertalia. Libertalia, the pirate city, is beautiful. I love pirates and pirate-themed things, and damn, I think this place looks so cool. The designs of the buildings, plus how these ruined structures are overlooking the vast island below, it's so good. I mean, the island itself looks incredible, with all the jungle and waterfalls and the surrounding ocean, but these flora-covered buildings, it looks so good, dude! And on top of that, you get skeletons and barricades left behind, invoking not only Pirates of the Caribbean, but also Les Miserables. This area has a lot of really good platforming sections and talking interactions, including a real nice optional scene where Sam and Nate sit down to talk to each other. The amount of time these characters get to just breathe and take in the world around them is nice. There are a few combat sections here, and the use of grappling hooks and environment make them some of the best shootout areas in the series. It turns out that Libertalia was created by legendary pirate captains coming together to create their own paradise. But in the end, the captains took all their crew's treasure for themselves, and the people of Libertalia revolted. Henry Avery had moved all of the gold and treasure to where the captains' mansions are located, a place called New Devon. We get the fight against Nadine, which is unquestionably the best fist fight in the series. Really good camera work, great action choreography, and the shot of Nate swinging onto the roof and jump punching Nadine is a shot that's used in literally every single video about Uncharted 4. And for good reason. This shot's fucking sweet. The fight leads into Rafe and his goons showing up, and there Rafe reveals to Nate that Sam has been lying the whole time. Sam didn't escape from prison with Alcazar. Alcazar has been dead for months. Rafe is the one who rescued Sam, and Sam had been working with Rafe for the past couple months until we tracked down the St. Dismas cross. Sam and Nate get separated, and Nate passes out into another flashback. This flashback picks up right after the last one left off, with Sam and Nate heading over to this old house where their dead mom's stuff had been bought. They scour around the house, and it's very Last of Us inspired. Just a bunch of items you can walk up to and press triangle on. The notes you can read around the house show that they're in a house of an adventurer, one whose child had grown up and completely distanced himself from her. It kind of shows a potential future for Nathan Drake, one of adventure, but also of loneliness. You know, if he keeps adventuring, he's going to keep pushing away the people he cares about. Just like this old woman. The old woman catches the two brothers, and it turns out she used to know their mom, and so she gives them one of their mom's journals. Their mom had done some research on Henry Avery's treasure, as well as having a theory about Francis Drake having heirs. And I don't really love that reveal, that the treasures that Sam and Nathan Drake have been obsessing over for their entire lives are just kind of hand-me-downs from their mom. I mean, Nathan Drake has never talked about his parents, and for him to be so invested in figuring out Francis Drake's history in the first and third Uncharted games, it kind of feels like, I don't know, it feels a little hollow. Like, oh wait, actually, this is even more personal for me to find Francis Drake's treasure, because my mom was also really invested in Francis Drake. I don't know. I just don't like it. Snap back to reality, Elena has shown up and is helping Nate out while he's telling her everything about Sam and what happened. She says that she almost didn't come back to save him, and the next series of chapters are really solid. Nathan Drake and Elena go through the jungle, platforming up elevators and fighting shoreline goons. Same stuff as usual. A lot of platforming, not that many shootouts. And that's all good, because the main focus of this chapter is what I think is really important to the story. It's the two of them dealing with Nate lying to Elena and betraying her trust. And the scenes these two characters have are really good. They're mature. They're solid. But they also keep the pace of the game moving, and I mean, in the end, we want to see Nate and Elena together and have a happily ever after, so I'm happy to have them work through their problems. The two get to New Devon and fight and platform their way through the mansions of the pirate lords, and two things. I said that this game does have a heavier focus on stealth. Almost every shootout section starts with some stealth elements. And this area was the only time I actually did resolve a shootout completely stealthy. No alerts. And that stealth gameplay is fun, but I'm not the biggest stealth fan. I was happy to do it once though. The other thing I want to mention is while recording, I got an achievement for killing 1,000 enemies, and it's called a ludonarrative dissonance. And I just thought it was funny given my ludonarrative dissonance tangent in Uncharted 2. Anyway, Rafe has captured Sam and is having the older Drake lead Shoreline to Avery's treasure. Elena and Nate fight through Henry Avery's mansion and his booby-trapped catacombs, and they're not great, a lot less enjoyable than previous areas of the game. The two meet up with Sam, and the gunfights are just overbearing here. So many enemies that have a lot of cover against the very limited cover you have. Sully shows up, he had flown Elena to the island, and the gang rescues Sam and they all get ready to leave. It's good to see these four characters together, and they all try to convince Sam to give up on Avery's treasure. Sam just can't though, and he ditches the crew with Nate chasing after him. Nadine is betrayed by her troops, and Rafe and Sam race to get to Avery's ship, which houses all the treasure of Libertaria. By the time Nate shows up to the ship, Sam is unconscious with Rafe waiting for him. The boat gets lit on fire, Nadine locks Rafe and the Drakes on the treasure room. Here we get a final boss fight of the game, and it's a very similar quick time event fiesta like the Talbot fight from Uncharted 3. It's not great, but Wraith is a much more enjoyable villain than Talbot, so at least the snarky shit talk in between QuickTime events is enjoyable to a degree. Nate kills Wraith, rescues Sam, and the two escape on a boat as the cavern it's anchored in explodes and collapses. The crew make it back to Madagascar, and Nate and Elena retire from treasure hunting, while Sam and Sully team up to keep on living their adventurous lives. It turns out that Sam had snuck away with some gold coins from Libertalia and had given them to Elena, and she uses those coins to buy the salvaging company Nate works for, and the two decide to go traveling the world and looking for treasure, but in a more safe and legal way. Time skip. The daughter of Nathan Drake and Elena Fisher, Cassie, named after Nathan's mom, is hanging around her home. We get to see the future of our main characters, and I'm glad to see that they got their happy ending. Cassie learns that her parents used to be treasure hunters and wants to hear all about their adventures finding lost cities, and the game fades to black. Credits. If I'm being honest, this is probably the best Uncharted game out of the four. While I think 2 is better paced, it definitely keeps the action moving along, and the train level of 2 is still one of the best levels of the entire series, and Lazarevich is the best villain in the series, and Uncharted 2 has Chloe in it. Still, Uncharted 4 has Rafe and Nadine, both of whom are very enjoyable antagonists. Rafe is so slimy, and Nadine is so confident and constantly demonstrates her strength. Her strength is no match for the cleverness and dumb luck of Nathan Drake. The setting here, though, I love the Himalayan mountains, but pirates are dope as fuck, and the various locations we get to go to are just great. Jumping from Italian villas to Scotland graveyards to the barrens around a volcano to a mini archipelago to a jungle to the ruins of a pirate city. I mean, it's good stuff. And the addition of the grapple hook is just fantastic. More quiet moments and platforming over shootouts and action is a great design choice, one that I'm a huge fan of. And the ending is amazing. It's everything that Uncharted 3 should have been. We wrap up the story of Nathan Drake forever. And that's good. I can't imagine anyone getting to the end of Uncharted 4 and wanting to see Nathan Drake go on another adventure. I mean, I'm happy he's retired. And I'm happy he's done. He's moved on, and he should stay moved on. It is the best ending for these characters, and for the series. This game was a little long. It took a little while to get started, but once it got rolling, it was a ton of fun. The action hit well, the set pieces were terrific, that caravan sequence, oh my god, and it had more character moments than any game before it. And these characters are great, so spending more time with them is never a bad thing. Uncharted 4 is the end of an era, and a journey I would recommend to anyone. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a good one, and take it easy.